Do you like to deal damage? Do you like to always have an answer for every problem you face? Well, you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, the Phantom Rogue Test Drive. So behind today's secret door, the Phantom Rogue Test Drive. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussions about Dungeons and Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Okay, so before I get started, let me just point out that I have started a Patreon. If you would be interested in supporting the channel, please do check it out. The link will be in the description and in the pinned comment. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to Marcelo and to GoGo for their support. Thank you so much for your support. So a test drive is exactly what it sounds like. It's your chance to take a class and see level by level how it'll play. So it's not exactly a build and it's not exactly a guide, but it is build-ish and it's guide-ish. But its main thrust is for you to be able to get that feel of what it'll be like to play the character. Because you shouldn't have to commit to playing a character based on just what you can get from what you're reading in the rules and then have to get surprised 6 weeks later in the campaign and find out, oh, I really don't like this character. That's what a test drive is here to help you avoid. So I'm going to touch a little bit on role-playing considerations, and then we'll get to the level by level. In the level by level, we're going to be going pretty thoroughly between levels 1 through 9, and then we'll kind of go very quickly up to level 17. We'll be skipping a couple levels, and I'll just sum them up. I don't want to take us in depth all the way up to level 17, or this will be a very long video. So first, before I get into role-playing considerations, let me just point out that I love this. I love rogues. And if I were to play a rogue, I would definitely play a Phantom Rogue. To me, the class is very much, forget all the flavor of the class. Just look at the mechanics of it. And essentially what the Phantom Rogue is, it's the rogue's rogue. It does everything that a rogue does, normally the base class of rogue, and it just does it better. You get better options. You get to do more of the stuff that you can already do as a rogue. So instead of doing extra stuff, you just become a better rogue. It's hard to argue with that. D&D has always kind of rewarded specialization to a certain degree. And in a weird way, this class isn't just a specialization. It's able to do other things on the fly. It has a short rest ability that is fantastic. So if you look at all of the skill ability of your typical rogue, the Phantom Rogue not only does that, it does it way better. If you look at damage, it isn't even close. The Phantom Rogue is, as you'll see, is a killer. If I had actually one bone to pick with the class, it would be the name. For whatever reason, Phantom Rogue doesn't seem to evoke what the class does. And I think that they got so bogged down into the trying to make it fit this undeadish, or whatever you want to call it, style or template, that it's easy to lose track of the fact that essentially you are simply the rogue's rogue. And so that leads me right into role-playing considerations here. I don't think that with a Phantom Rogue, and of course with anything like this, you should be talking to your DM. But this class, if you read the flavor text at the beginning of the class, it even kind of hints at the idea that, well, we don't know why it works. So, like, how did you get this power? Well, they don't even give you an idea of how you got this power. And to me, that's a kind of a problem. They give some ideas of Forgotten Realms real world counterparts to the Phantom Rogue. But how you get this, why you are this way, who knows? And so for that reason, because it's kind of nebulous, I think that you should feel free to be able to sort of reflavor the Phantom Rogue. So your character is, according to what the text gives us, is you are so used to dealing with being on the edge of death all the time that you gain a sort of kinship with death. This kinship extends into the powers that you'll see as we go along through the levels. And in many ways, those powers, if you were to reskin the class or reflavor the class, the level 13 ability is a bit more tricky to do that with, but even then you could find a way. So I'm not going to spend any time really saying that you should reskin the class, but to me personally, it just kind of begs for it. When you consider the other counterparts in Tasha's, like the Rune Knight or what have you, where it's a very alien kind of concept, but at least they define in a kind of a specific way how it works. At least to me, it seemed more specific. To you, the Phantom Rogue as written may just seem perfectly fine. The mechanics are fantastic. So I'm not complaining about that. I'm just wrestling with how this works. That's important to me. And I think it's important to any player who wants to know what they're playing. So my basic idea would be, from a reskinning standpoint, is I would look to the Reborn and take that as a kind of model, because it still fits in with the death kind of an idea. We're not going to take a Reborn as a race, but if you took the race of the Reborn and made it a class, then that could be the Phantom Rogue. So if you took that as a kind of a model, that might be an interesting way to approach it. Well, I don't want to get bogged down with that. You're going to do with it what you want to do with it. But in terms of embracing the flavor of the class as presented, it's not too really difficult to play along with that idea. I'm just looking for that tangible thing, that thing I can connect to. So I think it's going to be very important for you to either reflavor it in a way that it'll connect to you, or find that connection point that makes this make some sense for you. So moving along into mechanics. So for race, I'm going to have us take the Wood Elf. Now, I'm picking the Wood Elf because it does three things for the class that I really like. But as long as you were to pick any of the elven races, this would work. I happen to like the 35 feet of movement for the Wood Elf. When you pair that with cunning action, that allows to exploit that movement a little bit more. I like the ability to hide in really simple, lightly obscured areas that you wouldn't otherwise be able to hide in. And of course, what almost every elf is going to get, or any of the elven types, is the access to the longbow. So it's the longbow because I'm going to be using that in the numbers as we go through the level by level, and the fact that it's an elf are the most important things here. Now, in terms of stats, we would put the 15 into dexterity if we're doing standard array. Put the 15 into dex. Your 14 and your 13, and we'll put the +2 into dexterity. The 14 and the 13, con and wisdom, and put the +1 into the 13. So you'll have two 14s. Put those there. I'm inclined to dump strength, but there is one problem with that, and that is that I like a thief, or a rogue, that can climb. So your athletics check is going to be good because you'll have a skill in it, but if you put it as an 8, obviously you're going to have a penalty there. So even though I'm suggesting you dump strength, climbing is a big deal for a rogue. So trying to acquire slippers of spider climb would be a big deal if you did dump the 8 strength. So 17 dex and 14 con and 14 wisdom. The 12 I'm inclined to put into charisma, because I think the social skills are actually very, very valuable. But that's the problem that we're going to have with this test drive when it comes to skills. I don't want to spend too much time in talking about all the skills, because I find that how a DM calls for skills is very different from one DM to the other. And of course, campaign settings are going to emphasize one skill over another. So we're going to be really focused on, even though we're not at the level by level yet, while we're on the subject of skills, the big three that are the most important, of course, are stealth, perception, and thieves' tools. Without those three, you're not much of a rogue. Now, for background feats, we're going to take Magic Initiate. Now, in Adventurers League right now, you have a choice of 3 background feats if you don't already have a background feat. And those 3 choices, if you're in Forgotten Realm, are Skilled, Tough, or Magic Initiate. So we're going to take Magic Initiate, and for the spell, we're going to take Find Familiar. And for the 2 cantrips, we're going to take Booming Blade and Mage Hand. This is going, as we unfold with this character, you're going to see that this character ends up, because of that feat, ends up can play very much like an Arcane Trickster might, and still get all the goodies that you're going to get with the Phantom. And in a weird way, because you are a rogue with a familiar, you're going to be able to play a little bit like a bard, or if you were more specifically a mastermind rogue. So you're going to actually be dipping into Arcane Trickster and Mastermind with all the damage and the skills. All right, so level 1, we get Sneak Attack, we get Expertise, and we get Thieves' Cant. Now, Thieves' Cant is one of those things. It's either really, really useful or it's completely useless. It just depends on how your DM works with it. For Sneak Attack, we get 1 dice at level 1. And for Expertise, we pick 2 skills that we're going to be getting double our proficiency in. So we're going to obviously take Stealth. And at this point, we pretty much have to take Perception. And it's really a tough call between Perception and Thieves' Tools. But the reason I'm going to say Perception over Thieves' Tools is that by the time you are going to need to use Thieves' Tools, most of the time, if you have a party member with Guidance, you'll be able to get a bonus with Guidance already. Whereas Perception, it has to be right there and on the fly. So I just see other ways of being able to amplify your proficiency with Thieves' Tools. Now, this character is also going to be a switch hitter in combat. So because we have access to a longbow, and of course we get the rapier as a rogue, you're going to be able to engage combat as you see fit. Now, I'm going to assume that most of the time you're going to want to use the longbow, but as you'll see mathematically, there's going to be a high incentive to get in there and use the rapier and get into melee. The point of this is that you're a rogue. You have a D8 for hit points. So even though you're a very slippery character, I wouldn't get too siren-songed into getting sucked into melee unnecessarily just because you can do a little bit of extra damage. I mean, it's nice. That extra damage is nice. But we're not even going to have to worry about the extra damage for melee until level 5. So from levels 1 through 4, I'm assuming you're using a longbow whenever possible. Now, this character is going to have 3 different ways, and I'm just going to address this here, is going to have 3 different ways of gaining advantage eventually. Right now you have 1. You have it through your familiar. So you'll have if you pick the owl, which you should pick, it can do the flyby action and therefore perform the help action for you, and so you'll be able to gain advantage for that. And this is very easy to time up with wherever the familiar is moving in your initiative by simply taking the ready action to shoot. As soon as it performs the help action, shoot. As you move up in levels, of course, at levels 2 and 3, we'll be gaining the ability to hide every turn, which is going to be what I think should always be your number 1 choice. Always find a way to hide. So you'll shoot, hide. Shoot, hide. And at level 3, we'll get steady aim, and we'll address that when we get there. Steady aim based on how the board lays out will either be a very good option for you to take, or it could be sort of a last resort option for you to take. But regardless of which one you end up taking, you'll have 3 different ways of gaining advantage every turn, and that's fantastic. So at level 1, with advantage, you'll be doing 10.15 in damage every round. At first level, that's very good damage. And this is going to be important to note. As a damage dealer, you are going to be you're always going to be towards the top, if not at the top. But by the time we get to the later part of the mid levels, you're going to be leading the damage of the party almost certainly. And in the mid-late levels, you're going to be vastly outstripping everybody. But at level 1, that's very good damage, and you'll be doing more than pulling your weight. You'll probably be on the high end of all the damage dealers. Level 2, we get cunning action. I love cunning action. Cunning action, to me, when I first saw the rule set, I looked right at the rogue almost right away, because I always want to see how an edition of D&D treats the rogue. Like I said, I love the rogue. So I want to see how they're going to treat the rogue. And when I saw cunning action, I was just giddy. It's an amazingly strong ability. Anytime you have an ability to get an extra action, forget that it's not an extra attack. That doesn't matter. You need to move, you can move. You need to disengage, you can disengage. You need to hide, you hide. It's a fantastic ability that allows you to always be up to something. If you're a fan of action economy, that's it. Cunning action is kind of the gold standard of action economy. And when you start to pair that with the action economy that a familiar gives you, you're going to start seeing that this character is going to be able to start doing lots of different things. So in terms of advantage now, so now that we have cunning action, now you have hide as an ability to be able to use to gain advantage. So you should shoot, then hide. Shoot, then hide. So on round 1, you might have to use the help action to get advantage. After that, if you are successfully able to hide, or if you have a place to hide or whatever, and remember you're a wood elf, so you have that extra ability to be able to hide in lightly obscured areas. If that's the case, or if you're using steady aim later, you should always look for an opportunity to have the familiar give the help action to a comrade. This is what I mean when I say that you're going to be dipping your toe into being a mastermind as well. Because you're not going to be dependent on the familiar to get you advantage. Even though you want advantage, you'll have other means of getting it. Every rogue does. But that ability to just hand out a free help action and grant advantage to another teammate is really nice. And I see the rogue as a potential team leader, and people often don't think of rogues that way. But if the rogue is taking the point, as is often the case, and looking for traps or whatever, or just generally scouting, it naturally lends itself to a person that has to make decisions. That sounds like the beginning of a leader to me. And when you're starting to help activate teammates by giving them advantage, that's also the mark of a good leader. So regardless of how you want to play the character, realize that it has that kind of potential to it. Whether you want to embrace that is up to you, of course. And while we're on the subject at level 2 with cunning action, it's because I think cunning action is so valuable that I am not exploring anything like 2-weapon fighting or taking crossbow expert or anything like that where you get an extra attack, because all of your damage is already coming off of one attack from sneak attack. And yes, you can get a little bit of extra damage, but I value that bonus action because it's not just a bonus action. It's a bonus action that could be used for those other things. So whereas with another rogue, I might look at it and say, I would like to just make that choice from round to round. With the way we're building this one here with the elf, when we get to next level, you'll see that you're going to be doing all the damage you could really want. And at level 2, our damage remains the same as it was in level 1. Level 3, our sneak attack increases to 2 dice. We gain steady aim, and we gain our path. Steady aim, as I had mentioned before, it takes a bonus action to activate it. You cannot move, and you will gain advantage on one shot. So it's a great way of having advantage on demand, but you're stuck where you are, and that will take a bonus action as well. So is it worth it? It can be, because it could be just that the board, you're not particularly threatened. There isn't a lot of ranged attackers out there, and you're in a safe spot and you can shoot. You may as well do that and have the familiar deliver the bonus action or the help action to a comrade. But if possible, I would always opt for hiding. Hiding has defensive qualities as well as gaining you advantage. All right, so for our path, we get 2 fantastic abilities. We get Whispers of the Grave. Now, Whispers of the Grave, you pick a skill or tool proficiency, and you get proficiency with that after a long rest. Anytime you take a short or a long rest, you can pick a different skill. So whatever skill you feel like you might need that day or that rest is just a nap away. The ability to have that at your fingertips, just to be able to always have an answer, and it's just a short rest away, just a nap away, is amazingly good. Now, I don't want to oversell this because skills are still only skills, but they can come up all the time. It depends on your DM, but always feeling like you are up to the task or you have the best chance that you can get to succeed is fantastic. I often find that I'm like one skill short with characters. Even if I'm playing a rogue, there's always one more skill I would like to have. Well, now you've got it. And you can have whichever one you want, whenever you want it, more or less. Now, Wails of the Grave is the second ability, and this is the damage ability, and it's amazing. Whenever you deal your sneak attack damage, you can pick another target within 30 feet of that target and deal half the dice that you would roll to that target rounded up. So in this case, if our sneak attack dice is 2, so it would be 1. But at every odd level, it would round up. The target takes necrotic damage, and you can do this a number of times a day equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's a slight bit of extra damage on top, which is great, and you get it for free, and it doesn't cost you anything as far as actions go. Where this is really valuable is if there's like, say, a caster that you can't get to or that you don't feel like you might be able to hit, whatever the case, if that caster is within 30 feet, every time they're taking that damage from Wails of the Grave, that's a concentration check they might have to make. I say might because they might not have a concentration spell up. If they have a concentration spell up, you should definitely prioritize either hitting them outright or hitting them with Wails of the Grave. Wails of the Grave, there's no roll. If you hit and you did damage, and you'll see that obviously you're gaining advantage every time you're going to be hitting a lot, and it's going to be even better at 4th level. That forced concentration save is going to make them a nightmare. The rogue, in my opinion, is one of the unsung classes in terms of it's potentially a mage killer. And as I said before, the Phantom Rogue just doubles down. You're specializing in what you're already specializing in. So now just by doing that Wails of the Grave damage to that caster, you're forcing a concentration save. And the minimum concentration save, of course, is 10. Aside from casters, there's obviously, if you feel like, if you're on one target and you know that there's another target out there that's on its last legs and one more bit of damage would put them over the top, this might happen more if you're in melee, because if you're at range, you'll obviously just be able to shoot whoever you want, more or less. But regardless, that could also be a very good use for Wails of the Grave, so that if a target is close to dropping, they're a great candidate for Wails of the Grave. Now, Wails of the Grave is tied to your proficiency bonus, But by the time we get to level 9, we'll be able to do this pretty much at will, and I'll explain when we get to level 9. Now, with these additions, the extra sneak attack die and Whales of the Grave, our average damage per round is now 14.05. Average damage at this level would be 7.7 or so. So at level 3, you are doing nearly 100% of over average damage. The damage with this character is very strange because when we get to level 5, it's going to take a dip in terms of the relative value compared to the other party members. But so you're starting here and you're going to plateau for a couple levels and then you're going to spike. So you're going to have to bear through levels 5 and 6. And then at level 7, things will begin to pick right back up again. You're still going to be doing above average damage always. But at these early levels, you're doing great damage. Early mid-levels, you're doing good damage. And then it picks up. I'll explain everything. At level 4, we get the ASI, and we're going to take a feat. We're going to take Elven Accuracy, as you might have guessed. So this will push our dexterity up to 18. And now whenever we have advantage, which is all the time, we're going to be gaining an extra die to roll. So this will be super advantage. So this is going to make our accuracy to the point where you can miss, but it's mathematically so unlikely that it's hardly worth mentioning. And of course, you're going to have an increased crit chance as well. And at level 4 with Elven Accuracy, our damage jumps to 17. 17 is higher than what an average character would do at level 5. So just take a moment and pause and think this through. You're doing great damage. You've always got the skill that you need. You've got cunning action. You're moving around. You've got the familiar. There's a lot to love. And at level 5, our sneak attack jumps again another dice. So it's 3 dice for sneak attack. And our Whales from the Grave is now at 2. Our proficiency bonus is now at 3. So we can use Whales of the Grave 3 times a day. Now, we also get Uncanny Dodge at level 5. So with Uncanny Dodge, if you were hit by an attack, you can use your reaction and take half the damage. Now, that's fantastic for a lot of reasons. The chief among them is that the damage isn't typed. That's half of any damage, but it does have to be from an attack. But overall, just a great ability, very slippery, just an incredibly slippery character. Now, our damage at this level is 22.05. Because we're at 5th level, if you did go into melee and you used Booming Blade, you're going to get an extra D8 from that. And so your damage would jump on average to 27. So 22 is still good damage. It's above average. Average damage is like 16.5 at this level. So you're like 36% above average if you use the bow. That's good. It's solid. If you were to use Booming Blade and go into melee, that's going to put you into the like 60% above average, which is obviously very good, great damage, but you're in melee. Now, sometimes melee is just going to be the only option, but I wouldn't just jump in just because you can do that extra damage. Always remember you're still a rogue, and even though you have Uncanny Dodge, you don't have the hit points, you don't have the armor, just pick your spots. But hey, you are a switch hitter. So if the need arises, you can go into melee and you can do great damage. And at level 6, we gain expertise, so we get another 2 skills to double our proficiency bonus in. So here you would definitely want to take Thieves' Tools for the expertise. And I don't know, I would probably want to take one of the social ones. So depending on how your character plays out, any of the socials are good. But one of the socials that I'm calling it a social, even though it isn't a charisma skill, insight is really important. A high insight skill almost becomes like having a spell running. You characters lie to you all the time in D&D. Being able to have a reliable, high insight is very, very valuable. And so double proficiency bonus with a +3 and a +2 for your wisdom, that's a +8. That's amazingly good. And at level 6, our damage remains the same as it was in level 5. Level 7, we get evasion, yet another slippery skill. So if you are targeted, if you are part of an area of effect that has a dexterity save and you fail your save, you take half damage. And if you make your save, you take no damage. Now, the sheer amount of AoEs that you can run into in D&D, whether it be breath weapons or traps or any kind of assortment of spells, etc., is staggering. So this is a very high value ability, a great ability. And at 7th level, our sneak attack die raises again to 4 dice. Whales of the Grave remains at 2 dice. Average damage per round with the bow is 25.83. So now you're getting back up into the very good damage range territory, very good borderline great damage territory at this level. And if you went with Booming Blade and melee, you would get 30.83, which of course now you are in great territory. Level 8, we get our ASI, and we're going to take the dex to 20. We get a little bump in damage. Average damage now will be 26.84. And damage with Booming Blade will be 31.78. So at level 9, this starts to go completely off the rails. This character blows up into you will start now being the lead damage dealer for the party. And the reason why? We get tokens of the departed. When a creature dies within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction and make a token. It appears in your hand. You can't have any more tokens than you have for proficiency bonus. So at this point, level 9, our proficiency bonus is 4. So you can have a max of 4 tokens. And you can use the token in a number of different ways. As long as you have a token on your person, you have advantage on death saving throws and constitution saving throws. That's fantastic. So evasion isn't exactly giving you advantage on saving throws, but it's making your saves more effective. And now you have outright, and that's for most dexterity saving throws, at least with AoEs, and that's going to be most dexterity saving throws. And now with all constitution saving throws, you have advantage as long as you have one of these tokens. And of course, death saving throws, and that's always nice. You can also destroy one of the tokens, and when you do so, you can apply Whales of the Grave to a target without expending one of the uses that you would have for the day. Lastly, you can, as an action, destroy one of the tokens, and the soul that is associated with that token will form, and you'll be able to ask that soul one question. The soul is under no obligation to answer you. To be honest with you. So it could say whatever it feels like, and it will answer as concisely as possible so that it can move on with its afterlife. But so you're in kind of a sticky situation here because an enemy is probably just going to lie to you. So what's the use of this? Its real usefulness, in my opinion, is very fringe. I just don't view this as very useful against hostile creatures. They're probably just going to lie. But it's possible that someone that isn't your enemy, but perhaps is the enemy of your enemy, has died within 30 feet of you, and you were able to create a token of them. And then the combat's over, and you didn't know something that they might have known. You could ask them a question. This is so fringe. This is an amazing ability. The soul tokens are an amazing ability. This particular use of them is not really worth talking anymore about. There may be some other way that I'm not thinking of, and if you can think of a great use for it, then please put it in the comments. The main point here, of course, is aside from having the advantage on Constitution saving throws and death saving throws, is that you can destroy a token to inflict Whales of the Grave. Now, you can't have more than your proficiency bonus at any given time. So I assume that there's going to be 3 combats on average per day, and each one will last about 4 rounds. Your proficiency bonus is now at 4. So you already have 4 uses of Whales of the Grave. So you really, to make sure that you could get it off every single round that you're on average going to be fighting, you only have to account for 8. I think it's overwhelmingly likely that you're going to get a lot of those just through regular combat, and you're going to be able to not even have to worry about engineering this. But if you should be in a situation where that doesn't occur, then I'm going to suggest the old beetle trick, which is you carry a jar of beetles with you from now on, and whenever you need to make a soul trinket, you kill the beetle and make a trinket out of the beetle. Now, if you had to use all 8 on beetles, you're going to be running through beetles pretty quick. But I think that you would only have to do this a couple of times a day, most likely. But regardless of how you get them, I'm going to now assume that you can inflict Whales of the Grave every single round. Damage is going to be a little bit more tricky from now on to describe to you, because prior to this, with Whales of the Grave, I've just been averaging it out, and it is reflected in the average. But now, since we're going to be inflicting Whales of the Grave every single round, I'm going to be noting what your base damage is, then what your Whales of damage is. Whales of the Grave damage is. So now at level 9, your base damage, and of course, our sneak attack has gone up, and Whales of the Grave has gone up. So your base damage on average will be 28.95. Your Whales of the Grave damage will be 12.07. That's for a total of 41.02. And if you used Booming Blade, you would be doing 45.96 at level 9. At level 10, we get the ASI. Now, you could switch what we're going to do now to level 8. At level 8, we took Dex to 20. But you could easily take Lucky, which is what we're going to take here at level 10, and take it at level 8. Now, normally I would never advise doing this because hitting with the curve is optimal. It's what's best. But because you not only are attacking all the time with advantage and super advantage, and because the vast bulk of your damage is coming from sneak attack, you will suffer a very mild decrease to damage if you take Lucky at level 8. But it may be worth it to have Lucky sooner at level 8 than waiting till level 10. It depends on how your game and how your DM plays. But Lucky is one of those feats that covers a multitude of sins. So, or a run of bad luck. So, as slippery as you already are, Lucky makes you even slippier. Slippier. As slippery as you are, Lucky is going to make you even more slippery. You already have your Constitution saves covered. Dexterity is largely covered. Lucky will just shore up the rest. So there's a very good chance that you're simply not going to be failing saving throws from here on out. All things being equal, I would definitely take it at level 10 and not level 8. But like I said earlier, it depends on how your DM plays, really. Level 11, we get Reliable Talent. This is an unbelievable ability. The rogue abilities are just great. I love them. So anytime you're making an ability check where you are gaining your proficiency bonus, you can treat any roll of 9 or less as if it were a 10. That would mean, for example, if you have expertise in stealth, your minimum roll you can make for a stealth roll now is a 23. Your minimum perception check is 20. A staggeringly good ability. And at level 11, of course, our sneak die now goes up to 6, and Whales of the Grave damage stays at 3 dice. So your average base damage is now 32.79, and your average Whales of the Grave damage will be 12.07. That's for a total of 44.86. And that's without Booming Blade. Average damage with Booming Blade? 54.74, because Booming Blade at level 11 grabs another d8. A character that is doing average damage at this level would be doing 26.3. So if you were using Booming Blade, you are over double what would be average damage. And if you're not, if you're using the bow, you're hitting at 70-80% above average. And at level 12, we get an ASI. This is really going to be up to how your campaign is going for you and how the DM goes. I would just recommend taking the regular ASI and either bumping your con or your wisdom. Level 13, our sneak attack now goes to 7 dice and Whales of the Grave goes to 4 dice. So that's 11 dice from sneak attack you're rolling every single round. And from the path, we gain Ghost Walk. To activate it, it takes a bonus action. You become spectral. You can move through solid objects. You gain a fly speed of 10 with hover. And attack rolls have disadvantage against you. And this lasts for 10 minutes. Now, this can only be recharged if you take a long rest or you destroy a trinket. Is it worth it to destroy a trinket? Well, yeah. Especially with how I've described using the trinkets are nothing. So theoretically, if you had a really big jar of beetles, you could be doing this however often you want. The ability to move through solid objects now makes you the rogue of rogues. The ability to fly is, you're not using it for great mobility on the battlefield, but rather to get into hard places. And of course, getting into hard places is going to be incredibly easy since you can move through walls. In combat, of course, having automatic disadvantage is just, it's like you are now functionally operating like the reverse of a barbarian with reckless attack. So you're imposing disadvantage and you always have advantage. This character is nuts. Your base damage is now 36.65 and your Whale of the Grave is doing 16.1. That's for a total of 52.75. And if you use Booming Blade, it jumps to 62.63. 62.63. What an amazing level. So here's where now we're going to skip kind of forward right to level 17. Level 14, 15, and 16. Level 14, you gain Blind Sense. This is an okay ability. As long as you can hear, you can know the location of an invisible target that's within 10 feet of you. It doesn't give you any combat advantages. You just know where they are. Can be useful, not great. Level 15, you get a great ability with Slippery Mind. And of course, your sneak attack has gone up again. But Slippery Mind gives you proficiency in wisdom saving throws, which is fantastic. Level 16 is the ASI as standard. And at this point, if you didn't bump last time, bump that one or bump the last one again, depending on what you feel is most useful. And at 17th level, you gain the path feature Death's Friend. Now, when you use the Whales of the Grave feature, it deals that damage both to the primary target and to the secondary target. Amazing. This is effectively just not doubling, but increasing your base sneak attack by 50% in direct damage to one target. And as a bonus, with Death's Friend, if you start after a long rest and you don't have a Death's token on you, you get one. And now your average damage. At this level, your average base damage is 44.35. That target will then take your Whales of the Grave damage for 20.125. That's for a total of 64.47 to that one target. Then you deal Whales of the Grave to the next target. That's another 20.125. So your total damage done that round is 84.6. But if you used Booming Blade, that round in melee, Booming Blade is just bumped again at level 17. So now your average damage from Booming Blade, including the extra damage from Wails from the Grave to both targets, is 99.42. A character doing average damage at 17th level will do 32.4. That is a staggering 200% higher than average damage. Granted, we are talking level 17, but just to ever get to a number like that without having to use spells to do it or whatever is mind-blowing. I really love the mechanics of the Phantom Rogue. And if you can find a way to make it click and make it work from a roleplay standpoint, this has the makings of just an amazing character. What isn't to like? Okay, well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.